What's going on, guys? Welcome to an all-new segment of the channel where we will be discussing upcoming video games, particularly horror video games. And today we're going to be talking about Resident Evil 8 Village. Now, I'm really excited to be talking about this game because not only is there some great new footage that has been released earlier this week that we can talk about, but I also have a good buddy of mine, Alex Mason, UnrealEntGaming of the Unreal Network, is joining me. Alex, thank you for being a part of this. I'm really excited to be talking about this with you.
No, it's a pleasure. Thank you. And I think we have a lot to talk about because
yeah.
this game I really have high hopes for. So I hope that, it just doesn't disappoint, both me, you, and the fans.
Yeah, and so we've talked a little bit about this on your channel here and there. I mean, we have a lot of horror discussions, and so obviously you were the perfect candidate to talk to about this. But I wanted to get your take first off on this latest footage of Resident Evil 8, like the story footage. Like, what are your impressions? What are your thoughts? First thing jumping into that, like 2.5 minutes of footage that was just dropped by IGN.
Okay, so what I think is really good is they set up like this Transylvania Dracula-esque kind of like, atmosphere and tone to the game, which is good. I appreciate the level of tension because I feel like Resident Evil always has to have tension, and I really do hope that there's replay value for the game because I want to be able to go back and play this story and go, wow, this was so good. I want to play it again and again and again. I think that based on what we're getting, everything seems to be I would say well off versus just us getting constant, leaks, images, spoilers, trailers, just that ruin the game altogether. I really do hope that, because this whole idea is for Ethan to make his way into the castle, and I hope that we have a lot of interactions and dynamics outside in the village before getting to the castle, because I would hate to play the game and then for us to explore the village aspect only for a brief moment, right? What made Resident Evil 4 really fun for me was exploring the outskirts of the villages and then fighting, the chainsaw, potato sack wielding dude. Like, that was all fun and dandy until we got to a point where we made our way out the village and we went into this, castle-esque area and trying to find Salazar and whatnot. So I really do hope that before getting into the castle, we have a lot to do on the outside. So I'm getting these vibes immediately from all of these trailers and all of these announcements that we're going to be, emphasizing more on being inside the castle, because I'm assuming that everything that we're looking for is there. But before getting there, I really hope that there's a lot of action and a lot of suspense and a lot of kind of areas that we can explore on the outside before we actually make our way inside.
There are a lot of elements to this game that I think are, I've said this before, that are paying homage to earlier entries in the franchise. Now, Resident Evil 7 was the first time that we were introduced to Ethan Winters, and it was also the first game that was running on the RE engine, which also put the player for the first time, officially, in first-person perspective. And so you and I have talked, I think, at great lengths about this, and Resident Evil 8 Village is also doing the same thing. Second game with RE engine, and the second game to be first-person. And I want to know, I mean, what we've talked about in the past, you and I, regarding Resident Evil 7, you've said that you kind of felt like it left you a little bit hollow, and I sort of relate to that, in that the previous games all had a very different impact, I think, on fans as well. I think that it was also stated that Resident Evil 7 left a very polarizing feeling or sensation amongst the community. And I'm wondering, do you think that Resident Evil 8 being first person, I mean, do you think that's going to hinder the potential that this game has, or do you think that it's going to do well based on what we've seen?
I don't know. I feel as though Resident Evil 2 and 3 remake, they were really good. The over-the-shoulder camera-esque style, I think, works. And the way they kind of utilized it works. But if they want to go into this numerical continuity to where 7 follows 8, and then 8 is going to follow in 9, with us being in first person, then I don't really mind it, only if done well. I don't want to be able to play this game and look back on it and say, oh, it feels like COD. Oh, it feels like Left 4 Dead. Oh, it feels like any other traditional first person game. And what separates this, and I guess you can go back with this argument all the way to the classic games, when Resident Evil 4 kind of went into the route of introducing the over-the-shoulder kind of style with the camera. That's where people were like, "Oh, it's great, it sucks." It was an influx of people that were just different in terms of like having an opinion. But because everyone universally agrees, oh, we should have fixed camera angles. I'm sorry, but I don't think we're ever going to see that again. Not unless, of course, they want to go into a different direction in adding that as an option way down the road. But I doubt that we're ever going to see fixed camera angles again. I think that era is done, and we've accepted it since 4 moving on, and that's just the way it is. But after that, we got into Resident Evil 7, and RE7 introduced the first person perspective. It was good. Once again, I just felt like there was something lacking about it, but either way, I think that with this game, the only thing they should focus on is engaging the player enough to say, like, okay, well, I want the consumer to buy this product because the product is good, but I also want them to keep the product and not give it back or kind of have any sort of mixed feelings about it. So I need to keep them immersed within this universe in order for them to just keep coming back and, for them to possibly even encourage others to get the game. So I think that with that, they need to, heavily focus on the element of just giving us something that we can go back and be like, you know what? I beat the game like twice now. I want to play it again for the 3rd time just because I love this level, or I love this engagement, or I love what the game does with this. So with RE7, I didn't get that as much. So I'm hoping that they're going to capitalize that with this, because this game is introducing different kinds of, enemies and different level of enemies, as well as also like areas to explore, which is going to be good because I want to be able to go into the dungeons, the sewers, the village, the castle, the cabin, the cabins, all these places. And I'm just really hoping that they kind of focus more on that. And if they do, then I really don't think that the first person perspective of the camera is really going to matter, especially when you have a good product like that.
So I've always been sort of on the side of liking the immersion that first person can bring you. I mean, obviously, as a huge Resident Evil fan, naturally there is a love that I have of over the shoulder. You mentioned Resident Evil 4, and that's without a doubt my favorite game in the Resident Evil franchise. I've beaten that one more times than I can count, and Resident Evil 5, I think, comes to a close-ish second. And I only beat Resident Evil 7 once, and that's only because I've gone back and replayed the others, and Resident Evil 7 was kind of like the newest game, and so it wasn't anything that I would say is lacking in replay value, and I've got a terrible memory, so if I ever play a game, I could probably start the game over the very next day after beating it and have no clue what I'm supposed to do. That's the best part about my brain, is that it just suffers of having any sort of like memories, and I can't remember anything, so I could replay something like that and have a great time. But I do remember feeling that Resident Evil 7, it felt like a scary, like, horror survival game, but it didn't feel like Resident Evil to me. But that doesn't, I don't know, like, that's a good and a bad thing. It's a fresh new take on a franchise that has followed a very similar collection of elements over the years. And I think they were talking about this being the 25th anniversary or something like that of Resident Evil. And so I understand that you have to change things up and mix it up. But I personally do think that the first person perspective is very welcome. At least for me, but I do feel very strongly as well that I'm in the minority in that. I think there's a lot of people that are excited about this game that are going to get it and play it simply because it's Resident Evil. But I think there's a lot of people that would probably agree that maybe the over-the-shoulder is probably a better way to go. But let's jump into the story. I want to look at the footage that has been revealed. There was a Resident Evil showcase that was released earlier this week, a little live stream. I think it was from IGN, where they had an hour-long countdown on their YouTube, and then they ended up giving us like 16 or 15 minutes, something like that, give or take, covering some big things coming in the Resident Evil way, and including some footage, gameplay footage, announcing a Resident Evil 8 demo, like so much. So first, I want to talk about Ethan Winters. So to understand really where we're at with Resident Evil 8, we sort of got to talk about what happened in Resident Evil 7, right? So from the main story to the canon DLCs and to the results there, we know that Ethan is sort of a nobody guy. I think he's like an engineer, but he's not like connected to Umbrella in any way. He's not a special agent in some manner. He doesn't work with Ada Wong or Redfield or Kennedy. He doesn't work with any of those people. So for him to be thrown into the world of Resident Evil and dealing with these, well, I guess technically luckily in Resident Evil 7, the Umbrella was not the bad guys. They were reformed. They became the Blue Umbrella, and Chris Redfield partnered with them, which was sort of a shock. And it was a different organization that was behind all the bad stuff going on with that, right? Like the God, what was it? Like the connections or the contacts? I forget what it was.
I think it was also Neo Umbrella, if I'm not mistaken.
Neo Umbrella. Okay. I think I just remember like a blue umbrella logo or whatever. But nonetheless, there was some other evil organization, some crime syndicate that was involved with the events of Resident Evil 7. And Ethan's just going around trying to save his wife, right? It turns out she's actually the one who's the super spy that is on a special mission, or she's a co-op agent or whatever. Maybe not a spy, but a co-op agent. She's doing her thing. And something happens and he has to go and save her. So after everything is all said and done, I feel like Ethan is probably just trying to go about his life and do things and try to forget everything that happened. It's hard to tell exactly where things pick up and leave off. So Resident Evil Village, I mean, we saw in January of 2020, okay? So almost a year ago to the day, I think it was on the like January 20th, maybe, somewhere, ballpark, when I think that was PlayStation Experience or some PlayStation event, I forget what it was, but it was a showcase that PlayStation featured and debuted Resident Evil Village first. And in that, at the very end, after showcasing some of the gameplay a little bit and some cutscenes, Chris Redfield shows up out of nowhere, acknowledges Ethan, and then if I'm not mistaken, straight up murders his wife. And that shocked me. And I feel like that's sort of possibly like, there's got to be something big going on there, right? Is there something that I'm missing, or like, where is that coming from?
Okay, so I don't mean to be that guy, but in December, these hackers, they went into the databases and they leaked a lot of stuff for Resident Evil Village. So that little caveat was explained when the leaks came out, because as soon as they did, I'm for me, like, I don't care about spoilers. I think that if you spoil something for me, I get even more excited, because it's if you tell me, like, for example, like, I'm pretty sure by now people have seen Star Wars. So if you tell me, right, that in The Last Jedi, Luke Skywalker dies, I'm gonna be excited. I'm gonna be excited only because I'm anticipating seeing it, and I want to see how it unfolds when it happens. So when I found out what I found out, and I saw what I saw with my own eyes, I was like, okay, this makes sense. That makes sense. And a lot of what you see in these trailers is all up for interpretation, because you're assuming that this person is after this person for said reason, or this person kills that person for said reason. But you're asking yourself, well, a good example here is, why is Chris doing what he's doing? Well, when you ask the question of why did he kill or why did he shoot Mia, my response is, how do you know that's Mia? And I'm just gonna leave it at that, right?
So that's what I thought. That's exactly what I thought. I was thinking, like, okay, either she's a double agent, she's a bad guy, something else is going on, or it's like some sort of clone or some illusion. I figured it was obviously that.
It's something. It's none of those. It's something where it's very, very unpredictable. Like as soon as you find out and you see it, you're gonna say, okay, that I didn't think they were gonna go in that direction. But
let me ask you this: with what you know, is it good?
Like, oh, why did he kill her? It's like, okay, well, who said that was actually her? Who said that was actually Mia? You know,
with what you know, is it? Do you think it'll? Okay, obviously, save me from myself when I'm asking this. With what you know, with no spoilers for anybody who listens to this, with what you know, do you think it's going to please fans, make fans upset, or confuse fans with the reasoning behind that stuff?
Definitely at first confuse them, because I was confused when I saw it, and I still don't know the full backstory as to who, what, where, and how. But what I can say is that they took down the footage. I mean, I'm pretty sure I think Evil VR said back in December, a Twitter user named Evil VR, he said that a lot of people need to basically not go out of their way to see the spoilers, because it's gonna, it's gonna confuse a lot of people. But to back up what I'm saying, and I know that we're doing this via audio, but this is just an example that I'm gonna show you briefly, and you're gonna look at it and you're gonna go, well, what am I looking at, right? So that's one example of a leak. And at first glance, you're like, what am I looking at? But there's more to it than what meets the eye.
Okay, I'm not gonna say anything, but I feel like I have sort of an idea. I feel like I've sort of, I might
The
not be
thing is,
right.
like, again, it's gonna confuse people, but at the same time, I think more or less it's gonna shock people than anything
Okay.
else.
Okay. Okay. So with all that, obviously we know, regardless of whatever direction that aspect of the story goes in, Chris Redfield is doing what he's got to be doing. As far as we know, Neo Umbrella is not the same Umbrella as they were. And even if they were, I assume that Chris would not succumb to the peer pressure that is in the offices of Umbrella and become bad unless he was under some kind of like mind control, whatever. That's all conjecture. But what I really want to jump into now is the fact that Ethan is somehow in the midst of this crazy situation. And I say that this time because this isn't a zombie outbreak. Everybody knows this. This is not a zombie outbreak this time. This looks more like crazy, wild family members, again, in a different setting, different elements, different powers, different abilities that they've got, because the Bakers had regenerative abilities. They were infected by some sort of bioweapon, and it seems like that's kind of the direction they're going to go in, but this time it's not necessarily undead. I mean, I rewatched the footage from 2020. And I went and I watched the recent showcase that IGN had, and then they also had a story trailer that sort of added a little bit of new footage, but also kind of wrapped that up neatly on what was in the showcase. And so I've got all sorts of different things going on in my head right now with how this story is going to play out. But the most exciting thing for me is that as much as I love zombies, and as enthusiastic as I am as a zombie aficionado, self-proclaimed, and semi-expert in that field of undead, which I'm not, I'm just making things up. I'm very, very thrilled to see that we're going into like werewolves and possible like vampire-esque looking people that could be or might not be vampires. Like they turn into bats or butterflies or moths or whatever, and they just look bloodthirsty. And then of course we have like those ghoulish sort of, they look like maybe some sort of priestesses of some sort in the dungeon down in there that Ethan encounters. But I don't know. Before we jump into that, I just have to ask you one question. In what way, shape, or form is Ethan Winters qualified to handle any of this, by the way?
Oh no,
Like,
he's not. It's a story of his daughter, his baby is taken. So
right.
let's just say you or anybody watching this video, you had your child taken from you. You're obviously going to go to extreme measures to see that your child's brought back to you, right?
Of course.
So that's just the case in point where his daughter was taken. I'm not going to say why she's taken, but because they did reveal that. But it's more of a to close this video off with this. This game kind of feels like an it feels like an occultic game because there's a reason why they wanted the daughter. There's a reason why Mother Miranda's hinted at by the mistress, and that's supposedly the main boss. There's a reasoning for all of this, and what's even more interesting was back in November, it was alluded that this is going to be his final story. We don't know who he is when it refers to as his. That could be Chris, that could be Ethan. But what I do expect from this game, I think, going, into its release, is that someone's gonna die
Yeah.
between Ethan and Chris permanently. No Dragon Balls to be revived. That's it. And if this truly is going to be, let's just say, Chris Redfield's final story, then that's going to be different because we've always had the protagonist kind of emerge victorious by the end of all these games.
Yeah.
And for the first time, this isn't the case. One of them actually perishes.
See, we've talked about this many times in horror movies as a whole, right?
Yeah.
We've talked about a lot of the more kind of resurgence in franchises, like Scream is getting a new movie, Halloween's got a brand new trilogy, and it's one of those things where
Think about it. Like I think, well, not to say that people are just sick of it, but over time, over a long period of time, you really have to stop and consider some things. Like, okay, well, I'm gonna watch this movie, or I'm gonna play this game, but this game kind of has a history of like the good guy always winning,
right.
always despite the odds, right? Which is okay, but at what point do we need to kind of dial it up to say, okay, well, this time around, the hero doesn't come out of this victorious at all. But instead, if there's someone new, so you can like kind of like go along with and passing the torch with,
Mhm.
like the older generational characters kind of like pass that torch on. while their story ends and another one begins. That's the vibe that I'm getting from this game.
And I think that's a really good way to go. Same thing with a lot of these horror movie genres. We're getting 20, 30 years into franchises here, video games and movies. And it's like, how many times are we going to see these heroes, these protagonists, these good guys make it out relatively unscathed? Like we need to feel it. We need to hurt. And I feel like even in a video game, you got to remember this is a piece of art. This is a story that's unfolding that you're playing and you're figuring out everything and unlocking all these mysteries. But as the audience member, don't you think that it has much more impact when you feel that emotional turmoil? And maybe that comes into seeing like the main character's dog being killed, like God forbid, obviously, but and then a character that you love so much for decades and then ultimately dies. Now, I don't know if I could say Ethan Winters could fill the shoes of Chris Redfield. In fact, I would say that he certainly couldn't. But the way that you've worded that and the way that it has been worded, that it is his final story, Chris Redfield is the one that makes the most sense. Now, obviously, they could flip it on its ear and completely surprise us, but I feel like I don't want Chris to die, and that's almost another reason why he should, is because if he does, then that's going to make me feel so much more. I'm not going to lose interest in the Resident Evil series just because they kill Chris Redfield. I'd be furious if they killed Leon Scott Kennedy because I'm madly in love with him in a heterosexual, like, romantic relationship. Make that as you will. But I just don't, I don't know. I would be very surprised to see how they handle whoever they decide to kill, because Ethan is interesting, but I don't think he's a Chris Redfield type. But nonetheless, okay, let's jump into the actual story and the gameplay. So we're seeing some of these villains. We're seeing what looks to be a family, and we're looking at, you said Mother Miranda's another character. We know that there is a village in Romania, and at the top of this village is a massive castle, which is where I imagine a good portion of the gameplay takes place. And within that are supernatural beings that may or may not have some sort of infection or some sort of supernatural power. But what's weird about this is we're not seeing necessarily the same sort of mutants that we've seen in the past, like mutated, infected, or undead. We're seeing werewolves. We're seeing these sort of like I don't know, they just look malnourished priestesses, like in the alcoves of the dungeons. I mean, we're seeing what looked like some of those Los Plagos, like ogre creatures, those behemoth, like juggernaut looking creatures from Resident Evil 4, swinging hammers around. Like it's super crazy. They're picking off some of the more interesting parts of the past games, but this seems different. We've never seen werewolves before. We've never seen villains like this before, and it's not often in the Resident Evil franchise that we see like characters quite like this. And I think there was forgive the vulgarity on this, but at the time of making this video, so it is Friday the 22nd, and today on social media, after there was a lot of people that have caught up and watched the footage, they went nuts on Twitter in particular. Like, trending topics were about Resident Evil, and one of them was about, and again, the vulgarity, I'm just saying, the bust of the strong female villainess, the one in the white dress. Like, she's very attractive, she's pale, and she has a very large you get where I'm going with this, and people are falling in love with her.
Titties, bro.
Okay, your words. And I think it wasn't she, was she in the Resident Evil 5 Resident Evil 8 demo that's on PlayStation 5 right now?
Well, she was in the Maiden demo, but she only appears in the end to kill you. I mean, despite what happens, you die in the demos. But she's a bioweapon. What you're seeing in those leaks that I only showed you is her, right? So again, they're all bio weapons, just like the Tyrants were, just like any other BOW. But it is different to see werewolves and like vampiric creatures, but it's not too far off because we've seen these kind of creatures, or at least concepts, from Resident Evil Outbreak, from Resident Evil 1 with the shark. You know, we've seen often like different kinds of elements and things included, but this, I just think mainly whatever virus is triggering this, it's allowing them to kind of regain a bit of consciousness while still aware of like their power and then their usage of it while they're trying to engage against Ethan.
Because I feel like we first saw something like that with Albert Wesker. He was one of the first people, I think, that we had seen that had...
He's a rarity.
Yeah.
He's a rarity.
Yeah, he had full consciousness powers.
His sister was able to master the power.
Yeah, so it's and this all started with Umbrella, but I don't know if there's a connection here with with Umbrella. Like, aside from Chris Redfield's presence and him presumably still working for Neo Umbrella, it's hard to say exactly what exactly is the source of all this. Because remember, in Resident Evil 7, the organization that we never really got any insight into, called the Connections, they were the ones that were trying to get this little girl under control, like Evelyn, whatever her name was, the one who was like the main foe that was causing the infected in Resident Evil 7. And so we don't really know what's going on with that. I think that there was like a DLC that expanded on it just a little bit, but it wasn't enough to answer all the questions that we have. And based on the type of villains that we're seeing and some of the details that we've gotten glimpses of in the footage, it seems like they are going to have a heavy hand in this now. So while Umbrella is taking the backseat as Big Bad Corpo, it looks like the Connections and whomever they are and what they consist of, they are the ones that are now operating in the forefront, doing all this biological weapon stuff. But I think one element that I've liked about this so far, going back to the first-person perspective and with Ethan, is I like how the trailers and the footage and the stories that we're seeing from IGN and the official social media accounts and all that, is that this gigantic mansion in this village in Romania sort of resembles a lot of what we saw in the first Resident Evil when Redfield and everybody ran inside a mansion to escape, like the I think it was the zombie dogs, I think is what was chasing them or something, if my memory serves. Whatever, they ran inside, and that was my first thought, was like, whoa, this looks like a completely remastered, beautiful mansion in first-person view that reminds me of that first game. And obviously this is on a much more complex and detailed scale, and I'm very excited to explore that. But the villains seem like they're mostly all female, aside from some of the werewolves that we had seen. As to what exactly their end game is, why they've captured Ethan's daughter and all that stuff is hard to say. But as you pointed out, it does make sense that Ethan is now in this role to save his daughter. I guess I somehow missed the detail. Like, I saw footage of a baby exchanging hands, but I guess it didn't click in my brain that that's what was going on, is that Ethan was going after his daughter. That makes some sense.
Oh no, you'll see. I mean, there are elements I think that are hidden, but unfortunately, if you haven't seen the leaks, you wouldn't know. But since I've seen the leaks and I've seen lots of stuff, it's like, okay, again, there are certain things that don't make sense, but other things that, especially the questions that you're asking, it more or less comes into fruition to say, okay, I kind of have an idea as to where we're going with this, but I just really hope that by the end of it, they kind of nail it, because if they don't, then that's going to be a huge bummer, in my opinion, bro.
And plus too, like, I mean, so far I think I've been fairly lucky with the research that I've done on this game and having not exposed myself to that. So if ever I piss you off, just send me a Discord message with like a bunch of spoilers and images, and that's how you get back at me. So okay, so we got that. Talk to me more about the Maiden demo that you were able to play on PlayStation 5, because that right now is a PlayStation 5 exclusive. I have not gotten my hands on that console yet. I planned on buying Village on PC, and they said that Maiden would be available on other platforms later, closer to the May 7th release date of Resident Evil 8. But tell me more about that. Tell me what you experienced. Tell me what you saw. What are your thoughts? I need to know more about this.
Maiden is good, but Maiden is boring. Maiden is just, there's nothing to it. The only thing that makes it fun is the tension within the atmosphere, because you get to hear the crickles and the crackles and the chains shaking and the people getting tortured, and you get to hear and see visually everything that's going on. And I think that it works for what it's worth. But I think that, once again, it's boring. You don't do anything. There's lots of foreshadowing as to the things that are going to come. And once you go towards a specific portion of the castle, it's really it's laid out in such a way where you kind of already know that as soon as you start playing this game, when you get it and you start like scouring the castle, it's going to be big. But those 3 vampiric chicks, I think, are going to be after your ass for a long time. Because in the beta or the demo, you get to see one of them, and she's like this insect, like insect-esque kind of like entity, just like Marguerite was, I think, from Resident Evil 7.
Yeah.
And based on the gameplay initiatives from what the developers have said, you are going to get chased by them a lot, and they are going to, you know, really be up your ass a lot, along with all the other creatures that are going to be chasing you too. So the maiden demo, again, it was boring because it was so fast and there's nothing to do. But if you
There-
want to crank up, you know, your volume, and you want to sit back and just immerse yourself in this cold, dense, really, like, you know, tension filled atmosphere, then, you know, you're really gonna like it, because you kind of got the PT vibes when PT was around back in 2015. um just without like the little, you know, creepy baby in the freaking sink, and the giant lady chasing you. But all in all, once you start like finding your way around, and once you escape, quote unquote, by finding the key to the outside, the mistress gets you, and that's the end of the demo. But all in all, again, it's very boring. But in terms of its visuals and its layout, its landscaping, and just everything that it presents, it's really, really dark and really heavy. And I think that if you're one of those who just wants to sit back and enjoy the ambiance, that's definitely something for you.
So the demo, there's no combat to that, right? Isn't it supposed to be all like stealth and just like running through and solving
Oh,
puzzles?
it is, and that's what makes it kind of boring, because you can't do anything. You're not fighting anyone. You're just walking around trying to get from point A to point B. It's very linear, so that's what makes it kind of boring. It's you're not There's no substance there. But again, you do scope out a portion of the castle, and that's what I think makes it really fun.
I thought it was also wild too. That what is a lady's name who finishes the character off at the end? What's her name? Do we know? Has it been
The
stated in the,
mistress lady? Nah, I don't know her name.
okay, so at the very end, and we're getting into sort of spoiler territory, but it's a demo. Like it's not really gonna like ruin your day to know this. But when she kills you at the end, she shoots out like these crazy looking claws out of her
Yeah, like some
fingertips. Like,
Freddy Krueger
yeah,
shit. Yeah,
like
she
what
does.
is that's I mean that's a new power I think. I
Well,
mean
again, she's a bioweapon. Everything boils down to being a bioweapon, just like every other character, just like, you know, Wesker. She's a bioweapon. It's just undetermined as to what kind of bioweapon is she. Does she have any ties with Evelyn or that specific virus that, you know? So a lot of questions that I hope that we will hopefully get the answers to. Because I personally want to find out what this means going forward after Resident Evil Village, meaning like in the future RE9.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they are kind of at a point now where they're looking to turn the tides on the franchise and do something very, very different, which explains why they probably want to kill Redfield off. I mean, I would be really upset. I'd be far more upset if they got rid of Leon, because I mean he's my boy. But I feel like that. I feel like the design. I feel like the aesthetic. I feel like the story. I feel the enemies. I feel everything that they're doing with this game is right up my alley. So if you happen to be among the Resident Evil fans that feel like the first person perspective is not staying true to the franchise, you're gonna have to let yourself be a little more open-minded than that. Because again, Resident Evil games, for the most part, I think 4 and 5 were a bit more action-oriented. 6 is sort of forgettable, but I feel like 7 and 8, you had weapons, but it wasn't all about the action, or at least 7 wasn't. And I feel like that's what we're doing with 8, and 4 and 5 was all about the action. So I mean, don't go in thinking it's going to be like some sort of Call of Duty game or something of that nature, because it doesn't really strike me like it's going to be like that. I feel like there's going to be a lot of running, a lot of blocking, a lot of scarcity in ammo and weapons that you're going to be using, despite the fact that there's a merchant who shows back up, that morbidly obese, like, ugh, that guy looks disgusting. He's like just sitting, he can barely fit in his like little wagon, and he's just got guns and ammo and all this various
I
like
love
meats
it
and
because
food.
he comes off like such a douche.
Oh, it's well, I mean, I
Like
guess
he comes off like such a douche in such a narcissistic way, because he's like, ah, Mr. Ethan Winters, yeah, yeah, what do you want, say? So, and it's like, all right, well, I get it, like you're just a fat asshole, and nothing against that, but he reminds me personally of the Penguin from
yeah, I can
Batman.
see that. A really,
Yeah,
really
Penguin
fat
from
penguin,
Batman.
like
So I'm like, all right, cool.
fat,
So
fat penguin.
you sit there and you do what you got to do, and I think that he's gonna be, and he is someone that, you know, you're gonna encounter him in different situations. I don't know what that means, but I can only assume that he's gonna be placed in a position to where it's like he's gonna be fed up, he's gonna be happy, excited, angry. So it's like I wonder how that dictates the pace of the narrative going forward. But I just think overall, um, this is going to be a really, really fun game. And for those that have watched this video all the way through, once the game comes out May 7th, I think we're all going to have a great time playing it, in my opinion.
I think so too. May 7th can't come here soon enough. There's a lot of great things that are coming. There's bundles that include Resident Evil 7 if you haven't gotten your hands on that. The complete edition as well, along with Resident Evil 8. Very excited to see everything that's coming this way. The PlayStation 5 owners get a little bit of a taste earlier and sooner than the rest of us by grabbing that demo, which is available now, as Alex pointed out. That'll give you sort of a dipping your toe in the pool, so to speak, in understanding exactly what sort of elements of horror you'll be dealing with going forward in Resident Evil 8 when May 7th comes around. But nonetheless, guys, let us know what your thoughts are. I mean, there's so much more to talk about, and we have so little, aside from what's been spoiled and leaked out there, but so little has been shown to fans in official avenues. And we're only a few months away, more or less, before the game gets its official release on so many different platforms. So let us know what your thoughts are down in the comments section. If you have any input or any perspectives, let us know. I mean, you looking forward to the first person? Do you not like that? Do you think Chris Redfield is going to die in this game? What are your thoughts? Just avoid spoilers, you know, and I guess I'm speaking into the void of the internet here, but if you are going to leave a comment, I encourage you to not leave spoilers. We don't want someone to come along and see something there that's ruined it for them. So try to be courteous to your fellow neighbor in that way if you can. Be sure to like the video before you go. Don't forget to subscribe to both mine and Alex's channels. His are linked down in the description box below. Obviously, you know where my subscribe button is, so feel free to hit that for both of us if you like what you're hearing. And we will see you next time when we've got more video game conversations and discussions to be had about upcoming horror titles, which hopefully Alex will be joining us again for those.
Oh no, definitely. I'm really excited to talk to you about these going forward. So thank you so much for having me, bro.
Yeah, happy to have you on anytime. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. We're out here, guys. Thanks again for watching. Take care, be well, and we'll see you next time with more video game discussions. All right, later.